The sun was lazily rising over the fields of the farm. Timothy had been up for hours, as was his custom. At 25, he knew every corner of those lands like the back of his hand. His brown eyes scanned the familiar landscape as he walked among the crops, checking the progress of the harvest. Timothy had grown up on those lands, the son of former farm workers. From a young age, he explored those endless fields, learning the secrets of the land and hard work. Around the same time, Jacob was still married and lived on the farm with his wife and daughter, Gabriel, who was the same age as Timothy. The children used to play together in the fields, creating happy memories amidst the rural landscape. However, everything changed when Jacob separated from his wife, who moved far away and took Gabriel with her. Since then, the girl had returned to the farm only a few times, and it was Jacob who took on the role of visiting her in the city. Now, years later, Timothy had become Jacob's right-hand man, who treated him almost like a son. As he walked back to the main house, Timothy reflected on his life. He was a strong and robust young man, the result of years of intense physical work. But it wasn't just his strength that set him apart. His intelligence and dedication had led him to the position of trust he now held. Jacob's house, an imposing structure with its sturdy columns and a spacious porch surrounded by rocking chairs, dominated the center of the property as a symbol of the farm's history and prosperity. Timothy climbed the polished wooden steps, which creaked slightly under his feet, recalling the countless times he had sat there beside Jacob, watching the sunset while sharing a cold beer and laughing at the stories of the day. Jacob, always generous, often invited him to meals in the cozy kitchen of the house, where the aroma of fresh coffee and homemade dishes filled the space, transforming simple moments into occasions of connection and camaraderie. These moments, both on the porch and at the dining table, had become a cherished routine for both, a welcome break from the daily toil that brought them even closer. Upon entering the kitchen, Timothy was greeted by the aroma of fresh coffee. Jacob was already seated at the table, a steaming cup between his time-worn hands. "Good morning, Timothy," Jacob greeted with a tired smile. "How are things outside?" Timothy grabbed a cup for himself and sat down. "Everything's in order, Mr. Jacob. The harvest is progressing well. We should finish on time." Jacob nodded, but Timothy noticed that something seemed to weigh on the older man's shoulders. In recent weeks, he had noticed a change in Jacob's behavior. The millionaire, usually lively and full of energy, was walking around dejected and thoughtful. "Is everything okay, Mr. Jacob?" Timothy asked hesitantly. "You seem concerned lately." Jacob sighed, looking away. "It's nothing, my boy. Just the thoughts of an old man." Timothy didn't press further, respecting his employer's privacy. They finished their coffee in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Days went by, and the routine on the farm continued its normal course. Until one morning, while Timothy was working on top of a tractor, he heard an excited voice calling his name. "Timothy! Timothy!" He looked down and saw Jacob waving frantically. Believing it to be an emergency, Timothy turned off the machine and hurried down. "What happened, Mr. Jacob?" he asked, worried. Jacob's face lit up with a smile that Timothy hadn't seen in weeks. "I need your help, Timothy. I want you to paint Gabriel's room. She is arriving in 2 days." The mention of Gabriel caught Timothy completely by surprise. It had been at least a decade since he last saw her, and the memories of that encounter came flooding back, vivid and confusing. Back then, they were just teenagers, and Gabriel had come for a visit. The innocent and carefree childhood games had already given way to a more distant and formal relationship, marked by the haughty and spoiled attitude Gabrielle had shown. Timothy remembered her as a girl with refined manners, but with little patience for the simple and routine things of the farm. Now, as he digested the news, a flood of conflicting emotions hit him. He couldn't help but feel genuine joy seeing Jacob so excited, especially after weeks of withdrawn behavior. However, the prospect of having Gabrielle at the farm again unsettled him. He feared her presence might disrupt the place's tranquil harmony. Determined to perfectly fulfill Jacob's instructions, Timothy threw himself into the work of preparing for her arrival. He carefully chose a soft shade of blue for the bedroom walls, wishing to convey calm and comfort. He cleaned and arranged the furniture with care, ensuring that each piece was immaculate and in harmony with the environment. Finally, as a special touch, he placed a vase of fresh flowers on the bedside table, choosing the most beautiful ones from the garden, hoping that this would bring a bit of life and joy to the space. When the day finally arrived, Timothy was in the yard helping with some repairs on one of the sheds when he heard the roar of a powerful engine. A luxury car entered the main road of the farm, raising a cloud of dust. The vehicle stopped in front of the house, and Timothy watched curiously as the door opened. It was then that he saw her, and his jaw almost dropped. Gabrielle had transformed into a stunning woman. Her golden hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her green eyes shone with a maturity that hadn't been there the last time he saw her. She was wearing a simple yet elegant dress that highlighted her graceful silhouette. "Timothy, don't just stand there with your mouth open." Jacob's voice snapped him out of his trance. "Help me with Gabrielle's bags." Embarrassed at being caught staring, Timothy hurried toward the car. "Hello, Timothy." Gabrielle greeted him with a warm smile. "Do you still remember me? I don't think I've changed that much." Timothy swallowed hard, trying to regain his composure. "Of course I remember you, Miss Gabrielle. Welcome." "No need for such formality, Timothy," she replied, her smile widening. "After all, we used to be friends, didn't we?" In the days that followed, Timothy was surprised once again. Gabrielle was not at all the spoiled girl he expected. She put on her boots and accompanied her father around the property, showing a genuine interest in the workings of the farm. One evening, Jacob invited Timothy to have dinner with him and his daughter. The meal was progressing smoothly when Jacob let slip something surprising. "Timothy, did you know that Gabrielle decided to spend some time here at the farm? I told her that she should get married soon, because one day she will inherit all of this, and a single woman wouldn't be able to manage all of it." Gabrielle rolled her eyes, but her tone was light as she replied, "Oh, father, what an old-fashioned thought. Of course a single woman can manage a farm. I just need to learn the routine a little better." Jacob turned to Timothy, bringing him into the light-hearted conversation. "And you, Timothy, what do you think? Do you think Gabrielle can manage?" Timothy felt both of their gazes on him and answered sincerely, "I think Gabrielle can do anything she wants. She's very smart." Your comment was rewarded with a knowing smile from Gabrielle, which made your heart race a little. Jacob laughed, his eyes shining with amusement. "Ah, your opinion doesn't count, Timothy. You surely have already been enchanted by Gabrielle's beautiful green eyes." The two young people looked at each other, embarrassed, but laughing at Jacob's joke. In the weeks that followed, Gabrielle immersed herself in the life of the farm. She accompanied Timothy in his daily tasks, absorbing every detail of how the property operated. On a particularly sunny day, they spent the entire afternoon in the orchards, overseeing the apple harvest. The air was fragrant with the sweet aroma of ripe fruit, and the sound of laughter from the workers filled the environment. Timothy watched Gabrielle interacting with the employees, her kindness and genuine interest evident in every question she asked. She learned quickly, memorizing everyone's names and the details of their roles. During a break, they sat in the shade of an apple tree laden with fruit. Gabrielle picked a shiny red apple, twirling it between her fingers before taking a bite. "You know, Timothy," she said, looking at the horizon, "I've always loved this place. Even after I left with my mother, I dreamed of coming back." Timothy watched her, noticing how the sunlight filtered through the leaves danced on her face. "Why didn't you come back sooner?" Gabrielle shrugged, a sad smile playing on her lips. "I guess I was afraid that everything had changed, that I wouldn't fit in here anymore." "And now?" Timothy asked softly. She turned to him, her green eyes meeting his. "Now I feel as if I never left, as if this is the place where I always should be." At that moment, something changed between them, a connection that went beyond shared childhood memories. The days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. Timothy and Gabriel spent more and more time together, working side by side on the farm. She absorbed every detail of the operation of the property with a thirst for knowledge that impressed everyone. One afternoon, while Timothy was busy overseeing the birth of one of the farm's cows, Gabriel decided to speed up a task. Confident in her newly acquired skills, she climbed onto one of the tractors to go to the harvest area. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Gabrielle lost control of the machine, which began descending an embankment toward a steep ravine. Her desperate screams echoed throughout the property, catching the attention of the employees and Jacob, who ran helplessly toward the runaway tractor. Timothy heard the screams in the distance and, without thinking twice, raced towards the sound. He saw the tractor dangerously approaching the edge of the ravine and, in an act of sheer adrenaline, made an impossible leap, grabbing onto the side of the cabin. With a strength he didn't know he possessed, Timothy hoisted himself into the cabin, pushing Gabriel aside and taking control of the tractor. With precise maneuvers, he managed to steer the machine away from the ravine at the last possible second. When the tractor finally stopped, a stunned silence fell over the farm, seconds later broken by an explosion of applause and cries of relief from the employees who had witnessed the heroic rescue. Timothy turned off the engine with trembling hands and turned to Gabrielle. She was pale, her eyes wide with fear but unharmed. Without saying a word, he picked her up in his arms and helped her down from the tractor. Gabrielle clung to him, her whole body shaking from the shock of the experience. Jacob arrived running, tears in his eyes as he hugged his daughter. "My God, Gabrielle, are you okay? Timothy, my boy, you're a hero." That night, during dinner, the atmosphere was one of relief mixed with palpable tension. Jacob, still shaken by the scare, couldn't contain his emotions. "Gabrielle, what a scare you gave us," he said, his voice choked. "I told you that you needed to get married. You need a man to take care of you, my daughter. I won't be around much longer and—" At that moment, Jacob began to cry, surprising both Gabriel and Timothy. "Father, what are you talking about?" Gabriel asked, alarmed. Between sobs, Jacob finally revealed what he had been hiding for months. "Gabriel, I am very sick. I don't have many years ahead and I can't imagine leaving you helpless." The revelation dropped like a bomb on the table. Gabrielle hugged her father, crying along with him, while Timothy watched, suddenly feeling like an intruder in that intimate moment. Later, when Gabrielle withdrew to her room, still shaken by the news, Jacob called Timothy to talk on the porch. "Timothy," Jacob began, his voice tired but full of sincerity, "you are a good man, hard-working and honest. Gabrielle needs someone like you. Marry her." Timothy was stunned by the proposal. He had grown up respecting and admiring Jacob, and his feelings for Gabrielle had deepened over the past few months. But to marry like this, by arrangement— "Jacob," he replied carefully, "Gabrielle doesn't need anyone to take care of her. She is perfectly capable of running this farm on her own. Besides, I'm sure you'll overcome this illness and be by her side for much longer." Jacob smiled sadly but did not press the matter. The following months brought significant changes to the farm. Jacob began his treatment, facing the illness with renewed determination, encouraged by the constant presence of his daughter. Gabrielle, in turn, immersed herself even more in the management of the farm, taking on responsibilities that had previously been her father's alone. Timothy found himself sharing more and more tasks with Gabrielle. They spent entire days together, going around the property, discussing improvements, and planning the farm's future. With each passing day, their mutual admiration grew, as did something deeper that neither dared to name. It was on an autumn afternoon when the leaves of the trees began to turn golden that everything changed. Timothy and Gabriel were on top of a hill, watching the sunset over the farm fields. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, reminiscent of the day Gabriel had arrived. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Gabrielle commented, her voice soft. Timothy looked at her, the glow of the setting sun reflecting in his green eyes. "Yes, it's beautiful," he replied, but he wasn't talking about the landscape. Their eyes met, and in that moment, all barriers fell. Timothy stepped forward, taking Gabriel's hands in his. "Gabriel, I think I'm in love with you," he confessed, his heart beating so loudly he was sure she could hear it. Gabrielle's face lit up with a radiant smile. "Oh, Timothy," she whispered, "I'm in love with you too. For weeks, maybe months." They kissed there at the top of the hill, with the sun setting in the background, sealing a love that had grown slowly, nurtured by mutual admiration and work. In the months that followed, Timothy and Gabrielle became inseparable. They shared not just a love for each other, but also a love for the farm and everything it represented. Jacob watched the blossoming relationship with a mix of joy and relief. One night he called the two of them to talk. "You don't know how happy it makes me to see you both together," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I always dreamed of seeing this farm in the hands of people who truly love it and understand its value. Now I know that, no matter what happens to me, it will be in good hands." A few months later, Timothy and Gabrielle got married in the garden of the farmhouse. It was a beautiful and emotional ceremony, with Jacob walking Gabrielle down the makeshift aisle among the flowers. To everyone's surprise and joy, Jacob's treatment began to show positive results. He gradually regained his strength, driven by his determination to see his grandchildren growing up on the farm he loved so much, spurring him to fight against the illness. The years passed, and the farm continued to thrive under the care of Timothy and Gabrielle. They had 2 children who filled the property with their laughter and play, just as their parents had done so many years before. Jacob, defying all odds, lived to see his grandchildren grow. He spent his afternoons sitting on the porch, watching the children run through the fields, his eyes sparkling with the same love for the land he had when he was young. On one of those golden afternoons, with Timothy and Gabriel sitting by his side, Jacob smiled, satisfied. "You know," he said, his voice laden with emotion, "I always knew you two were perfect for each other. From the day Timothy saved you, Gabriel, I was sure. Sometimes destiny needs a little nudge." Timothy and Gabriel exchanged a knowing glance, their hands intertwining. They knew their love had blossomed naturally, nurtured by mutual respect and a shared love for the farm. But they couldn't deny that destiny's nudge, in the form of the tractor accident, had been the catalyst that brought them together. And so, the farm continued, passed down from generation to generation, always cared for by hands that loved it as much as Jacob, Timothy and Gabrielle. A love story, not just between 2 people, but between a family and the land they called home. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.